And we're very pleased to be welcoming Colin Barnicle to the show today, the director of the newest Red Sox documentary you can find on Netflix, The Comeback 2004 Boston Red Sox. Colin, we know you've been on a media tour the last few days, this time of year, as we look back at the 20-year anniversary, and the doc comes out tomorrow as we record this on Tuesday. It comes out on Wednesday. Sean and I have had a chance to see it and loved it. Sean lived through it in a different way than I think I did because he was covering the team. I was 8. I was not covering the team. But it was a phenomenal doc, and we appreciate you taking the time during what I expect is a very, very busy time for you.
No, this is great. I love talking about this. I like talking to this about the parking lot guy, downstairs. So
Um,
it's not hard talking about the Sox.
and you had
Colin,
the Red Sox parking lot guy in the documentary too. So,
Jimmy,
yep.
Jimmy's our guy.
yeah, a lot of familiar faces from start to finish in this, Colin. Let's kind of start at the beginning here. Obviously, you have the 20th anniversary tie-in this month,
Mhm.
so that lends itself to these kind of projects. But even before we get to the 20th anniversary, there have been other documentaries, 4 Days in October
Sure.
by ESPN. What other than the 20th demarcation there? Led you to think that there was still some stories to tell here, and this was a project that you and your brother wanted to undertake?
Yeah, we were yeah, this is like the most covered thing in maybe sports in the last 20 years. Books have been written, docs have been written about it. So my brother and I, when we had always kind of wanted to do a Red Sox project. So this came about through Meadow Lark, John Skipper, and Howard Bryant, who had it at Netflix. And we kind of got the job about a year ago, last fall. And Tim Wakefield had just passed. And I had actually worked in the clubhouse for 2 years when he was there. So and he was such a great guy to me. I really felt like there was this responsibility to tell kind of the whole story. Not really so much about like the comeback from 3 games down, but kind of the comeback from like 85, 86 years of losing, the comeback from 2003, coming back from playing 500 baseball for most of the 2004 season. All those things is kind of like the comeback writ large. But we were really determined to figure out how this happened. And, I was at the Game 7 2003 game where we lost in Yankee Stadium. It was the first playoff or regular season game I had seen outside Fenway Park. So I really was interested. We were interested, my brother and I, in like kind of figuring out how you would build up a team to get to the point where you're in back-to-back ALCSs, and then how you build a team that when they're down 3-0, like what was the change in culture that allowed them to come back from 3-0? That was kind of our main mission on that. I think everybody knows what happened, but we were kind of more interested in how it happened. Like, where was the ignition point on it?
What was the role played by the Red Sox as an organization and Major League Baseball in obviously giving you access to footage and personnel?
Mhm.
What as you undertook this, what roles did they play, and how did that factor into the series getting made?
Yeah, they were the Red Sox bent over backwards for us. They were unbelievable. They had obviously a lot going on. It's 20 years. They have everybody coming in. They have another Netflix series that's going on right now. So they had a lot to do, and we never got a no from them. We always got a yes. They were unbelievable. You could pick up the phone and call Pam Ken, and she would be like, "Yeah, what are we doing? How do we work on this with you?" And MLB was great in terms of like, just the footage in general. I mean, it's over 100 hours of footage that we're kind of putting together. We were kind of putting the plane together as we were landing it. So it took it took everybody working together. And the Red Sox were just incredible from, you know, just something as basic as like, where can we film this interview where the sound, where like the lawnmower guy cutting the grass won't like break up the sound here when we're interviewing Jason Varitek to, you know, who, what is, do we have Derek Lowe's phone number? Stuff like that, like very basic stuff that they were completely helpful with. So, yeah, the project doesn't get made without the Boston Red Sox really being a complete open door on this and without MLB kind of opening up their, I guess, footage vault, you would say.
Sean and I have seen over the last year, as you touched on, the other doc going on with Greg Whiteley, and we've seen
Yeah.
the crew that's around and
Oh
just
my
the what
God.
goes into it and
Yeah.
the technology and the travel and everything that's gone on. From your end, going and doing all these interviews, collecting all this footage, can you possibly earmark, number one, how many hours you put into this on a personal level, and then just what are logistics of this? Are you flying around the country getting different players? How did it all come together?
Yeah, a lot of it is the way Nick and I kind of work is kind of the old like shoe leather sort of like just walking around talking to people, getting somebody's phone, like one person we talk to, which will lead to a phone number for another person. That's kind of how we do it. So I would say like it was like 12 to like 14 hours a day every day for like 6 months.
Mm.
Which was it's not hard to do when you really like the subject and you really like the Red Sox. So it was kind of a labor of love, but almost all of it was kind of just organically getting people getting their phone numbers from, you know, talk to Doug Marabelli and he'd be like, "Oh, I have this guy's phone number." And then you would trot Nixon, and he'd be like, "Oh, I have this guy's phone number." And that's kind of how it worked, a lot of it. Or talking to Pam Ken being like, "We can't find, Pedro's phone number." And she's like, "I got it." So a lot of it was that, just calling people, trying to work out their schedules. These guys, during the baseball season, a lot of these guys are really busy. They're baseball players. So scheduling them, saying we'll come to them, flying around the country. You mentioned Greg Whiteley. We used to call his because we'd run into him. We used to call him the SEAL Team Six. Like all the guys have the earpieces in and the big
Hmm.
rigs and stuff like that. And we're walking around with like two cameras. It's like me and Bobby O'Brien, our other producer on this, walking around as Nick's like walking around the park trying to like get other phone numbers. So it was kind of a labor of love, but it was, I don't think it was the best of times for my wife when I'm calling her and being like, "I'm going to be home late tonight," but every night. So, but we loved doing it. It was scrubbing through hours and hours of footage and being so horrified by how many ball games I went to in the 2003. Like I'd catch sight of myself in the stands and I was like, "It's noon on a Tuesday. Like, shouldn't I be in school?" So it was, it was really a labor of love, but it was like really fun to make. And you have that responsibility of, so much has been done on it. Like you got to go deeper. You got to know everything. You got to, make it. So we were kind of making it for our dad, who was like a hardcore Red Sox fan. And then our mom, who's like goes to the games, but she's not like, a double play gets turned and she's like, "Well, why are there two outs there?" So,
Hmm.
trying to make it as accessible to those two halves as possible. And the way I always thought about it was like, if I'm watching a documentary on Australian League football, like I know nothing about like that, but I'll follow good characters if they're being candid and I like them through a story. So kind of approach it that way.
With You talked about this a little bit, but your connection back to the organization, obviously, as a fan growing up, but then
Yeah.
working there in a couple of roles. I saw an interview where you called yourself the worst intern ever with the Red Sox, but
Awful.
just
Awful.
just take people through how that relationship formed, and then being around players that were from this era. How much did that help with some comfort level when you sat down to do these interviews?
Yeah, the comfort level was really good. A lot of the players who were there in '04 were still there in '06 and '07 when I worked in the clubhouse.
Hmm.
So it's weird. It's like the last time I really hung around them for that amount of time was when I was washing their underwear, and now I'm like doing this. So it took a beat for them to be like, "Wow, you're doing this now?" So, but it was super conversational. And the thing about that '04 team, which was in the '06 and '07 team, they're just like they're normal, really good guys, you know? Like a guy like Tim Wakefield, I'm like 20 and I'm like scrubbing their cleats and washing their underwear. And he treated me like I was like, I could have been David Ortiz. I could have been hitting 50 home runs. You know, he treated me the same way. And all those guys did. So that was really, really, helpful to the conversations we had with them. And then, yeah, I think my first year with the Red Sox, I was at '05, 2005. I was a front office intern and I was just so awful at it, just terrible. Like I didn't send the I was in the mailroom and I forgot to send the scouting reports down to the Florida one time and they got swept. And then I was on the switchboard when it was an old switchboard and I couldn't figure, I was like rerouting calls like the wrong way, like down to the dugout. It was like terrible. And then at some point they made me go measure every seat in the stadium, the width of it, because they were switching around the seat. They were like, just go do that. And then after that, they were fine. They were like, you know what? How about you just what about the clubhouse? Would you like to work there? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like it's a dream job. So I kind of failed up into the clubhouse.
And from being, as we all have, as I said, Sean covered it. I lived through it as a
Yeah.
diehard fan as a kid. You lived through it, older and almost working for the team at that point, but following every pitch. What were the biggest things you learned about the whole story doing this project?
Yeah, there's some specific stuff that I didn't know about, but like generally was which I like about it is the you look back 20 years later and it's kind of like a fairy tale where like the underdogs come back and it was really going through like with Theo or John Henry, we really approached it from like, listen, it's not a rivalry. You lose 8 decades in a row to one team. It can't be a rivalry. I think by 2003, like even when the divisions were created in 1969, like the Yankees had won 10 pennants and the Red Sox had won four. So you're getting beat there anyway. Just trying to make sure that like we knew it wasn't a rivalry going in and then trying to also, you know, get into that idea that, Theo, when he's 28 and he takes over, he's not like a fully formed GM at that point. Like the self-doubt of all these different, from the ownership to baseball operations to even the players, like, can we do this? Can we? I mean, Kevin Millar is on his way out of Major League Baseball, kind of working through the self-doubt to try to do something that, for all intents and purposes, has never happened before. Um, that was like something that was kind of new to me because you always kind of put these people on a pedestal, like they always make the right decision. But I think specifically, just like the tension in the clubhouse in '04 to begin the season, just how deep it went was kind of interesting to me. And then all like episode 3, the microphone thing in the Yankee Stadium, like I didn't know about that. So just like sinking into that paranoia that these guys had. And also, we as fans, it's always personal to us, like covering it, being from Massachusetts, like you're just kind of born into, disliking the Yankees and Yankees from New York, disliking Boston fans, but it's not like that for the players. Like it had to become personal at some point for them. And just finding kind of that point where it starts to build for them personally, where it's not just like, yeah, we want to win to go to the World Series, but we want to beat the New York Yankees specifically was kind of like new to me, hearing that like personal kind of, you don't want to say animosity, but I think Jason Varitek put it nicely. He called it competitive hate.
Colin, I was wondering if we can peel the curtain back a little bit on the making of this and the
Yeah.
participation you had from some people and the participation that you didn't have from others.
Yeah.
There's a pretty central figure here who did not take part in any of the interviews. That's Nomar Garciaparra. We should tell
Mhm.
people that this sort of the doc begins with a recap of history and modern history, starts with 2003, gets into the 2003 postseason, takes you up to the 2004 trade deadline and the trade of Nomar, gets into the fall of 2004. So for the first almost 2/3 of the doc, Nomar's a pretty central figure in the story, and yet he did not sit for any fresh interviews. What can you tell us about trying to do something with him and your communication with him?
Yeah, we reached out to him multiple times. He didn't want to be in the dock, and that's fine. I mean, neither the Jeter, neither did A-Rod, several other players didn't either. So it's like, you don't want to be in the dock. That's fine. I think a lot of it gave us an indication that, there's always the question, why now? And it gave us a good indication that, some of this was still kind of a live wire for a lot of these players, which I totally get. Yeah, but we reached out to all the principals on either side of the line to be in it. Some said no, some said yes. And a lot of the no's were, some of it was scheduling, but I think a lot of it was like, I don't want to talk about that. Kind of like even 20 years on, kind of more of a, it's still a fresh wound, which was, the whole team we're working with, not everybody's from Boston. Most people aren't. So it gave a good indication to the whole team that like, oh, okay, we're doing something that's a little bit more present in the minds here of these players than you would think after 20 years.
Right. Grady Little is obviously
Brady's in it. Yeah.
a big story and is interviewed pretty extensively, talking about the 2003 season, and then, of course, the 2003 ALCS in Game 7, his decision to stick with Pedro Martinez. You get John Henry recounting. I turned to Larry Lucchino in the stands, and can we fire him now, or do we have to wait until the game is over? Sort of some stuff we've heard hinted at. And Grady is pretty forthcoming in recounting that. But there's a point in which you use to signify his firing, right, as the story turns to 2004, and it shows Grady lifting up his sweater, taking the lav mic off, and saying, "I'm out." You use that to suggest he's gone from the job, but to me,
Yeah.
that suggested something got said or asked that he didn't want to keep going. Can you shed any light there?
Oh, yeah. Grady was answering everything. He was totally an open book. He was an incredible interview. And, I was surprised that he sat down for this, but, and I understood why he did in conversations with him. I feel like he has his fingerprints all over that 2014. Like the core of that team were guys that he kind of maturated, that, the David Ortiz, the Bill Millers, the Kevin Millars, who were all, they were scrap heap guys almost that they brought in. Ortiz is released, Kevin Millar's going to Japan, Bill Miller has like a reconstructed knee, not exactly murderer's row, in that lineup. And I feel like he, won back-to-back 90 plus games in 2 seasons in a very intense situation. And, I felt like he felt like he had his fingerprints all over that 2014 and hasn't really gotten the credit for it, which I totally understand. And I think he wanted to make clear there was always a disconnection between him and, the new way they were doing things in Boston, the analytics. And, he always felt like that lineup and that clubhouse was his, that, it's not like today where the GM and the manager a lot of the times are working kind of like a hand in glove, which you see, with the Dodgers right now, Dave Roberts. So he's kind of the last of the old school kind of managers.
Right.
And I feel like he really wanted to kind of show that like, yeah, okay, I get the analytical point of view, but I didn't LCS game 7. Um, and that there isn't, you don't always need to go by the book. Obviously, that did not work for him in that game 7. Um, but yeah, he was totally open. He was a great interview.
So when he's lifting his sweater up and taking the lav mic
Yeah.
off and saying I'm out, that's not him stopping an interview and not participating anymore.
No, no, that was him. I think mid-interview. I forget what I asked him, but he was like, "Hold on, I gotta leave for a minute." But I don't think I asked him anything that he didn't want to answer.
Hmm.
Or maybe I'm just an idiot, and I was, I wasn't really paying attention. Maybe he just kind of he played me a little bit there. But no, he was totally open.
Yeah, it seemed that way, but then that last clip of his, I wondered if,
Yeah.
there was something that came up where he was kind of like, nope, I've had enough of this. I'm just curious, what that line of
No, not that
questioning
I
was.
realized from my end, but maybe from his end. You
Yeah,
know,
maybe.
it
Oh,
didn't feel like that when I was interviewing him.
Okay. And finally, the participation of John Henry, which is significant in this project. As you well know,
Uh-huh.
he does not sit and give a lot of media availabilities, hasn't for a number of
Yeah.
years. What was it like, re-examining what was, at that point, he had been the owner for less than 2 years, and they finally
Yeah.
snap an 86-year-old championship drought, and he can walk on water. In terms of Red Sox fans, what was he like remembering this month? I mean, those 2 seasons, but uh, particularly the culmination in October of '04.
Yeah, he was great. He was I think we had an hour booked with him and we ended up speaking with him for 3.5 hours. I think
so
he noticed
so
that
he
and
is
kind of
capable of doing that. That's the moral of the
yeah,
story.
yeah. I
Okay.
think he like you can notice it in the interviews. Like we obviously interviewed him around like 4 p.m. and it gets dark outside. We were there for a while with him. But he was great. And he was one of the first interviews we did, actually. We did him in December of last year. He was like the second interview we did. Um, we did the bulk of the ownership in December, and then most of the other interviews, the players took place in February and March. With some, I think Pedro was the last to sit in June. Um, but he was great going over it, and the Red Sox now are kind of a victim of their own success. Like the fans back then, we were just hoping to win, and now we expect to win. We've kind of become almost like Yankee fans in a way where it's just, if we don't make a deep playoff run, it's the worst thing ever, which I get. Like I'm a fan too. But he was really prepared for the interview, and more candid than I thought. He would. You're always going into the interview thinking, "What's the worst case scenario here?" Like they're just gonna kind of softball it, and he was good. He didn't really softball much.
Colin, I wanted to ask just how, if you've gotten, we obviously got the advanced screeners. I'm sure that the players
Mhm.
involved, owners, everybody who was involved in this did too. You went to the premiere on Sunday night. John and Tom were there, Sam Kennedy. What
Yeah,
has been the reception from the people that lived it and were in it on how you presented it so far?
yeah. So like the stamp of approval we're really looking for is from like the Jason Veritek's and the Kevin Millars and you know, really, I remember doing the Timlin interview, and he knew me just from the clubhouse, and I was like, I felt like the responsibility was kind of to portray the team in a more present sense and to represent uh, Tim Wakefield in the doc, um, as he was on the team, what he meant to the team, and that was the big responsibility, and they really liked it. I know Kevin's really liked it. I mean, he's obviously a great storyteller. He's
Hmm.
I think I told my wife, I was like, if I ever have a plus one at another wedding, I'm inviting him, not you. So,
He was the narrator of the whole thing.
did yeah, and we really felt like it was a three-tiered approach where it was like, what are the changes in ownership? What are they doing? What are the changes in the front office and baseball operations? What are they doing? And what changed in the clubhouse to make it different from, those past teams where it was kind of 25 guys, 25 cabs is the old saying, and he was kind of the catalyst to that. So like he's as important in some ways as John Henry or Theo or any of these people in terms of being able to cultivate and change the narrative of who the Red Sox were for 8 decades. So, but the response from them, you're never really trying to make a doc for the people sitting down, but you do want them to respond in a way where they feel like, yes, that's what it was like. And that's been the response from them so far, which is great.
Colin, if there's a revelation from this, it's the suggestion from Pedro Martinez that there was some nefarious
Yeah.
skullduggery going on in the visiting clubhouse in Yankee Stadium. Pedro claims to have found a lav mic in the
Mhm.
hidden in the ceiling. Um, Nobody else is corroborating that, at least on camera. Was that the first you've heard of it? And what can you tell us about what Pedro alleged?
Yeah, so we had heard about it. Pedro was the last to be interviewed. So originally that section had several players in it. We heard it from Bronson Arroyo and Doug Mirabelli and Kurt Schilling and most of the pitchers. They were like, yeah, no, that happened. Like we pulled a microphone down and then they had their team meetings, the pitcher team meetings on the team bus. Like they would walk outside and have it on the team bus. Um, I think it goes more toward the paranoia of like these teams at that moment because they obviously didn't bug their own clubhouse for that next game where they gave up 19 runs. So, I mean, I'm not sure that the proof's kind of in the pudding that like maybe that didn't really lead to anything, or no, maybe it did. And you know, all the Yankees said, no, like I had never heard of that before. But it is odd. It's like totally weird that like there was a microphone. And I think the Doug Mirabelli was the guy who pulled it down from the
Ceiling panel.
clubhouse like yeah, panel.
Yeah.
And he did it and Schill was there and Pedro was there and Bronson Arroyo was there. So like we knew it actually happened. We didn't know, who knows
The
if it
origins
led
of it.
to
Yeah.
yeah, we knew like it physically happened. We don't know if it maybe it did lead to, somebody in Yankee Stadium, but maybe it didn't.
Yeah. The doc drops on Netflix on Wednesday, October 23rd, the day after we're recording this. The last 5 years have not been great ones for the Red Sox. It has been a while since they've uh, had a deep postseason run and enjoyed the kind of
Mhm.
success they had in 2004. Fans are angry about spending, the direction of the club, the fact that they're not as competitive. Um, do you think this is something of a double-edged sword for your potential audience where, yeah, you may be bringing in new people who didn't live through this, or you may be appealing to people who want to relive the glory days, but is there a section of people you worry about saying, you know what, this is just going to depress me about how the Red Sox once were so big and so important and such a big part of my life, and they're not anymore? Just wondering your feelings on how people are going to respond to this.
Yeah, you take the project and you're kind of looking at it and originally it was supposed to be 2 episodes, 45 minutes each episode. And we were like, you can't you can't dig it deep enough or go back to an origin story enough with that. And I think when we first plopped it down, it was like we were like, okay, here it is. It's 4 hours. And there Netflix was like, it's it's June and you got to get this thing done in 2 months. And we're like, yeah, it should be 3 episodes. And they're terrific in terms of working with us on that. And it finally became 3 episodes. But yeah, I feel like it's kind of a, it's kind of like an ode to how quickly you can change the culture of a team. Last 5 years, obviously. I mean, 2021, we, went to the ALCS. That was kind of a down year for the American League, much like almost like this year was for the American. I mean, I respect the Yankees. They're the best team in the American League, but they did get like 3 bye weeks to the World Series, you know? So, I think you hope with those kind of I don't think it's anything new for Red Sox fans to be like bitter and looking for the other shoe to drop, but for those fans, you're just hoping they watch it and they go, okay, you can change the culture of a team quickly over an off season. That '02 team and that '01 team, they had a bunch of problems in the clubhouse. They had um fights with their manager, things weren't going right. They had one in 2001, 2000, they were, not great. They kind of looked a little bit on paper like the Red Sox today do. And I mean, it doesn't take that much to change the culture of the team. The margins now are a lot slimmer to put together a really good team. Back then, it was like, David Ortiz was on the waiver wire. Like, Kevin Millar, who had hit back-to-back 300 seasons, was for all intents and purposes on the waiver wire. So your hope is that somebody who's watching it today can kind of look at it through the lens of like, okay, we can do this. We can change the culture of the team quickly. And you look at the core of this team now, and it's not that dissimilar from the core of the team in 2003. You're pretty strong up the middle. Our outfield now is incredible. Like a ball won't fall in. You have like, Duran, Rafaela, Abreu, and Wright. You have hopefully Story can give us 140 games at short, and you have some question marks at second and a pretty solid base at catcher, although you could always improve. Great first base, Devers at third. So you're hoping just like in 2002, 2003 that they go, okay, depth of pitching, depth of bullpen is kind of the target. It's not dissimilar to, the way they kind of attacked that '03 offseason and the '04 offseason. So hopefully we're not too many moves away. I mean, look at the Yankees. They won 82 games last year and now they're in the World Series. So
Right.
what do we win? 81? So hopefully we can do that.
And then you can make a doc about it in 20 years. That'll be
Yeah, let's just, give $600 million to it. Let's give the amount of money that John Henry paid for the Red Sox to Juan Soto or something.
Yeah, we have our doubts. Colin, we really appreciate you hopping on and talking about the documentary. Again, it's the Comeback 2004 Red Sox documentary on Netflix tomorrow. I assume bright and early, Colin?
Yeah, I think it gets released almost immediately on Wednesday,
Okay.
Eastern time. So um, you can watch it over your breakfast, I guess. If you have 3 hours, if you have like 3 hours before you have to go to work,
Everybody
you
works
know.
from home now, so you're good.
Yeah, you're on a Zoom call in a meeting, just mute it and watch the thing.
Exactly. Well, thanks, Colin. We
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Colin. Appreciate it.